Amelia Hart looked me straight in the eye and offered me $500,000 to step away from her father's jet. Not to fix it, not to inspect it, to walk away. She saw an old black aircraft mechanic in grease-stained coveralls, a dented toolbox by my boots, and a man who probably needed the money badly enough to stop asking questions. She wasn't entirely wrong about the money part. But behind the avionics access panel, I had already seen one wire that did not belong there, hand-spliced, wrapped in black tape, and routed around a factory connector no honest mechanic would bypass. That wire wasn't just bad maintenance. It was a secret with insulation around it. Before I tell you what I found inside that private jet, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Because that morning, I thought I was fixing an aircraft. I was wrong. My name is Raymond Ellis, and before Amelia Hart put $500,000 on the table, I was just the man folks called when expensive aircraft started acting cheap. I worked out of a private hangar near the Florida Panhandle, where the air always smelled like jet fuel, salt water, hot rubber, and coffee that had been burned since sunrise. I was 44 years old, ASE trained before aviation took me in. FAA, certified after that, and old enough to know machines usually tell the truth before people do. My son, Theo, was 10. He loved model airplanes the way some kids love video games. Our kitchen table had more plastic wings than dinner plates most weeks. He could name a Gulfstream from the tail shape, but still couldn't find both shoes before school. That boy could identify winglets at 50 yards and lose a backpack in a 2-room apartment. I considered that balance. Theo's mother, Carla, was in a recovery center outside Pensacola. I won't dress that up. Addiction had taken pieces of our family and left me holding the parts. Some days I was angry, some days I was tired. Most days I was both before breakfast. But Theo still wrote her letters. He kept them in the box from his first model airplane kit, the one with a blue and white Cessna on the lid. That box was taped at the corners and bent on one side, but he treated it like a safe. Every letter started the same way. Dear Mom, I saw a plane today. One morning, before all this happened, I stood in the hangar bathroom washing hydraulic fluid from my hands. The mirror above the sink was spotted with old water stains. And when I looked at myself, I didn't see a hero. I saw a man with tired eyes, gray starting at the beard, and hands that could rebuild a fuel pump, but still couldn't fix what hurt his child. That is a special kind of helpless. Theo knocked on the open door with a half-built model in his hand. Dad, he said, if a plane has one bad wire, does the whole plane become bad? I dried my hands on a paper towel. No, I told him, but one bad wire can make good systems lie. He looked at the model like it had personally disappointed him. So, planes are dramatic. I laughed once, only the expensive ones. That was the dry humor that kept us breathing. Not enough to erase pain, just enough to let air through. Later that week, Hart Aviation called about an old private jet that belonged to Amelia Hart's father. They said it had intermittent avionics faults, navigation flicker, communication dropout. Nothing consistent. I almost said no. I had enough work and not enough patience for billionaires with urgent problems they created by ignoring routine maintenance. But Theo needed stability. Carla needed time. Bills needed answers. So, I took the job. I thought I was walking into a hangar to fix a jet. I didn't know I was walking into a family history somebody had rewired by hand. Hart Aviation did not look like the kind of place that needed a mechanic from a 2-bay hangar. Their private terminal sat behind a security gate with polished steel letters, white concrete, and glass so clean it looked like the sky had been cut into rectangles. Inside the main hangar, the floor shined hard enough to reflect the jet's belly. Even the trash cans looked financed. The aircraft was a Gulfstream 4, older but beautifully kept from a distance. White fuselage, deep blue stripe, heart crest near the tail. The kind of jet people photograph before they ask whether it can safely fly. Amelia Hart met me beside the left wing. She was in her late 30s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, and the kind of calm that told me she had learned not to show panic in front of employees. Behind her stood Richard Voss, the family attorney. Silver hair, thin smile, hands folded over a leather portfolio like he was guarding a small country. "You're Mr. Ellis?" Amelia asked. "Yes, ma'am." She glanced at my toolbox before she looked at my face. It was quick, not cruel, but quick enough. "We've had 3 avionics specialists look at it," she said. "No one found anything conclusive." "Intermittent faults usually hide from people with clean shirts," I said. She blinked. Voss did not laugh. That was when I knew he was going to be fun in the way root canals are fun. Amelia's mouth almost moved into a smile, then stopped. Private doubt passed across her face so fast most people would have missed it. She was worried about that aircraft. Not the money, not the schedule, the aircraft itself. "My father loved this jet," she said. Voss touched her elbow lightly. "Your father trusted certified experts." "Amelia." I looked at him. "I'm certified." His smile stayed where it was. "Of course." "I meant specialists familiar with legacy corporate aircraft." That was the insult, wrapped in silk so everybody could pretend it wasn't one. Amelia looked away. The humiliation didn't come from him doubting me. I had been doubted by better-dressed men in colder rooms. It came from the way the young assistant nearby stepped forward and handed me a visitor badge marked Temp Contractor, in red letters big enough for air traffic control. I clipped it to my coveralls. "Does this come with a cape?" I asked, "or just the limited parking?" Nobody answered. Dry humor works best when nobody rich knows what to do with it. Amelia led me to the cockpit. The panels were powered down, screens dark, switches lined in quiet rows. She stood just outside the cabin door, arms crossed. "My father's memorial flight is in 3 days," she said. "I need this aircraft cleared or grounded. No drama." That was fair. But Voss watched me like a man hoping I would touch the wrong thing and prove him right. I opened my notebook. "Have you ever been told to stop asking questions when you knew something wasn't right? If so, you already understand the feeling I had standing under that jet. Because the fault wasn't in the cockpit. It was waiting behind a panel nobody wanted opened. I started where everybody else had finished. That is usually where the truth is hiding. The first 3 mechanics had chased the cockpit faults because that's where the warning showed up. Navigation flicker, communication dropout, transponder hesitation, but aircraft problems can be like family problems. The noise happens in one place while the damage starts somewhere nobody wants to crawl into. I asked for the maintenance records. Voss handed me a trimmed folder, not the full logbook. "That should be sufficient," he said. I looked at the folder, then at him. For a book report, maybe. Amelia's mouth twitched again. She was fighting a smile and losing by about half an inch. I requested the full records, power interruption history, avionics bay access notes, and any supplemental work orders from the last 25 years. Voss said those files were archived. Amelia told him to get them. That was the first time I saw her push back against him. While we waited, I powered the aircraft on external ground support. Screens came alive across the cockpit, soft green and white light filling the panels. I ran the standard checks: first bus voltage, alternator feed, grounding continuity, breaker response, avionics cooling fan, antenna connections. Nothing screamed. That bothered me. A real fault leaves fingerprints, burn marks, loose shielding, corrosion, heat discoloration, a tired connector, something. This jet looked too clean in all the places people expected a mechanic to check. So I went lower. I removed the side access panel beneath the forward cabin floor, the one most people hate opening because it puts your shoulder at a bad angle and your dignity somewhere near the carpet. I had spent enough years folded into aircraft bellies to know dignity is overrated when wiring is involved. My knees cracked so loud the assistant looked over. "Normal," I said. "That's just the sound of experience filing a complaint." This time, Amelia did smile. Dry humor was easier than admitting my back hurt. Behind the panel, the factory harness ran neat and bundled, just like it should. Wires labeled, shielding intact, tie wraps spaced evenly. But one bundle near the avionics relay had been pulled tighter than the rest. Not enough for a casual inspector to care. Enough for me to stop breathing for a second. I reached in with a flashlight and inspection mirror. There was black tape. Not aviation-grade lacing tape, not heat shrink, not factory sleeving. Black electrical tape. Somebody had hand-spliced a wire behind the relay and routed it around a factory connector. The splice was old, but not amateur. Whoever did it knew enough to hide it from a lazy inspection and not enough to make it right. I should have called another mechanic in right then. I should have had a witness. But that old self-reliant part of me whispered, "Just confirm it first." So I kept going alone. And that mistake gave Voss time to lock the records away. The wire was red with a faded yellow tracer, 18 gauge by the look of it, running out of the avionics relay bundle and disappearing behind a support bracket where no factory diagram said it should go. I lay on my back beneath the panel, flashlight clenched between my teeth, one shoulder pressed against the cabin frame. There are glamorous parts of aviation. This was not one of them. The splice sat 4 inches behind the relay housing. It had been stripped by hand, twisted clean, soldered, wrapped in black tape, then tucked under the harness so the bundle looked untouched from the front. Whoever did it had steady hands. That made it worse. Sloppy work is easy to blame on ignorance. Careful wrong work means somebody made a choice. I photographed it from 3 angles, then checked the connector map. The bypass should not have affected normal flight controls. It was tied into an old auxiliary data line, the kind used years back for custom cabin telemetry, owner monitoring, sometimes encrypted maintenance notes before systems got standardized. That was strange. Private jets carry more history than people think. Every owner adds something. A phone system, a cabin screen, a satellite unit, a security device. Rich men like buttons that make them feel safer, even when the buttons just give mechanics headaches. I followed the wire with my mirror until I saw a small metal tag tucked behind the bracket. Not printed. Hand-stamped. E17. That number meant nothing to Amelia's current records. But stamped tags are old school. Mechanics used them when they wanted the next mechanic to know where not to cut. I climbed out, stiff as a folding chair that had lost a fight, and went to the maintenance desk. Amelia stood near the hangar window with her arms crossed. "Did you find the fault?" she asked. "I found a fault," I said. "That sounds different." "It is." She looked toward Voss's empty office. "Mr. Ellis, I need plain English." I almost gave it to her. No, almost. But then I saw Voss walking back from the records room with no folder in his hands. "Archived files are unavailable," he said. "Storage issue." I looked at him. Storage issue. Digital migration failure. That's a fancy way to say the computer ate your homework. Amelia didn't smile this time. Voss stepped closer. "Mr. Ellis, your job is to determine whether this aircraft is airworthy, not to conduct a family excavation. That sentence told me he knew the wire mattered. I said, then you won't mind if I document the modification. His smile thinned. Unauthorized modifications can create liability for everyone involved. I advise caution. There it was again. Not no, caution. Words men use when they want you to stop without admitting why. Amelia looked at me, and for a second her face said more than her mouth did. She wanted the truth. She was also terrified of what it might cost. I tapped the photo on my phone. That wire doesn't belong to this aircraft as documented. Voss said softly, documentation is not always complete. No, I said, but lies usually are. The hand-stamped tag E17 sat in my mind like a door with no handle. And somewhere behind it was the reason Amelia's father's jet had been rewired by hand. I went home that night with the photo of the spliced wire on my phone, and the feeling that I had touched something somebody meant to keep buried. Theo was sitting on the kitchen floor when I walked in, surrounded by model parts, glue, and one instruction sheet that looked like it had survived a small tornado. Don't step there, he said. I froze with one boot halfway over a plastic wing. That wing cost $3 and my emotional stability. I respect both, I said, stepping around it. He had been working on a Gulfstream model he bought with birthday money. The tail was crooked. The nose gear leaned left, and one wing sat a little higher than the other. To Theo, it was perfect because he had built it with his own hands. The blue and white letterbox from his first kit sat open beside him. Inside were 2 new letters to Carla. One had a drawing of the model taped to the back. Did Mom call? I asked. He shook his head without looking up. I sat on the floor across from him, my knees complaining like they had formed a union. Theo picked up a tiny piece of wire from the kit and frowned. If I use the wrong wire here, will it still look right from the outside? Probably. But fly wrong. It's a model, son. It's not flying anywhere unless you throw it at the couch again. He almost smiled, then didn't. I mean for real. I looked at him then. For real? Yes. Something can look right and still be wrong where it matters. He nodded, careful and quiet. That was the moment I should have told him I was scared. Not of the wire, not of Voss, of being the only person in a rich man's hangar saying the thing nobody wanted said. But I didn't. I told myself I was protecting him from worry. Truth was, I was protecting myself from needing comfort from a 10-year-old. That silence cost us before bedtime. Theo found my phone on the counter when it buzzed. A message preview lit the screen. Stop digging before you lose more than work. He read enough. Dad, he said, are you in trouble? No. The answer came too fast. His face changed, small, but I saw it. He had already lived through adults saying fine when nothing was fine. Carla had done that before bad weeks. I hated myself for sounding familiar. The next morning, I brought the Gulfstream model with me to the hangar because Theo had asked me to show him where the real one lived. I almost said no. Then I remembered how many things I had already kept from him. Voss was waiting near the service entrance. You received my message, he said. I receive a lot of messages. Most of them are about my car warranty. His eyes didn't move. You have a son. I stopped. You have obligations, he continued. A man in your position should understand risk. Dry humor left the room. Behind him, Amelia stood by the jet, watching us from across the polished floor. I put Theo's model airplane box down on the workbench. For the first time, this wasn't just about an aircraft. It was about what my son would learn if I walked away. I didn't answer Voss right away. I walked past him, opened my toolbox, and took out a borescope camera. If a man threatens your family before breakfast, you can either swing at him or get more evidence. One of those gets you arrested. The other gets you useful. I chose useful. The E17 tag sat behind the bracket, half hidden by old dust and newer fear. I fed the camera along the wire path until the screen showed a second label, smaller than the first, wrapped in clear tape. Ellis/1999. My hand stopped. Amelia saw my face. What is it? I didn't answer until I cleaned the tag with a cotton swab and took a photo. Ellis was my last name. My father, Joseph Ellis, had been an aircraft electrician before his stroke. He never talked much about private clients. He only said rich people paid twice once to get something done, and again to pretend they never asked. I called him from the hangar office. His voice came slow, weak around the edges. "Dad," I said, "did you ever work on a Hart Aviation Gulfstream?" Silence. Then he said, "Where are you standing?" That was answer enough. Voss stepped into the doorway. "This is beyond the scope of your work." Amelia turned on him. "Let him finish." For the first time, Voss looked at her like she had stepped out of the role he preferred. My father told me about a sealed cabin telemetry unit installed in 1999. Hart's father had ordered it after a private medical trip. The system recorded encrypted voice notes and biometric access logs. It was supposed to be removed later. It wasn't. The hand-spliced wire had kept that old unit powered even after the official system was retired. Amelia whispered, "Why would my father hide recordings?" Voss answered before I could. He was a sick man. He recorded everything near the end. Paranoia is not evidence. It sounded reasonable, painfully reasonable. He looked at Amelia, not me. "Your father loved you. Do not let a mechanic with half a diagram and a family name turn grief into a circus." For a moment, she almost believed him. Then I connected a low-voltage bench supply to the bypass line. The old unit clicked once behind the panel. A tiny green light blinked awake. The hangar went still. The playback was damaged, but one file opened. A man's voice filled the cabin speaker. "Amelia deserves the truth. I raised her, but I am not the man on her birth record." Amelia gripped the seat back. Voss closed his eyes. I turned toward him. He exhaled hard. "I protected the family," he said. "Your father was dying. The company was fragile. One illegitimate history. One changed ownership trail, and everything he built could have been torn apart." "So you buried it," Amelia said. "I preserved it." "No," I said. "Looking at the wire, you rerouted it." That wire wasn't hiding a malfunction yet. It was opening a decision somebody made 23 years ago. Amelia did not speak for a long time. The old recording had ended, but the cabin still felt full of it. Her father's voice seemed to hang between the leather seats and polished wood trim, telling a truth he had not been brave enough to say while he was alive. Voss closed the cabin door halfway. "Amelia," he said softly, "this does not need to leave this aircraft." She looked at him. "You knew." "I knew enough to protect you." "From what?" "From chaos, from lawsuits, from people crawling out of the past with hands open, from every reporter who would turn your grief into a headline." It was the best version of his lie. Then he turned to me. "Mr. Ellis, you have done your job. The aircraft is not airworthy until the unauthorized wiring is properly documented and removed. That is your professional conclusion." "No," I said, "that's part of it." His jaw tightened. Amelia opened a leather check folder from the side table. Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed even. $500,000, she said. "Walk away. Sign a non-disclosure." tell the FAA you found old wiring. Nothing more. I looked at her. There was no cruelty in her face. That almost made it harder. She was not trying to buy my silence because she hated me. She was trying to buy one quiet hour before her whole life split open. I understood that. I had spent years wanting one quiet hour. $500,000 would change everything. Theo's school, Carla's treatment bills, rent, a better apartment, a truck that didn't sound like it was praying every time I turned the key. I thought about my son's model airplane sitting on the workbench outside the cabin. Crooked tail, uneven wing, still loved because he built it honestly. Then I thought about my father's name on that tag. Ellis/1999. My father had left a marker for the next mechanic because he knew somebody might need the truth later. He had not fixed everything. He had not told everything. But he had left one small, honest thing where a skilled hand could find it. I set the photo of the wire on the cabin table. That wire wasn't hiding a malfunction, I said. It was hiding a decision. Amelia's eyes filled, but she did not look away. Voss said, "You are making a mistake." "No," I said. "I made it yesterday when I thought I had to carry this alone." That was the part that hurt to admit. I stepped out of the cabin and called an independent aviation inspector I trusted. Then I called my father back. Amelia did not stop me. "Tell me honestly, what would you have done? Would you have taken the money, or risked everything for a truth that might destroy a family?" By sunset, the jet was grounded, and the wire stayed exactly where it was. The independent inspector arrived the next morning with a gray beard, a soft voice, and the kind of flashlight that made me trust him immediately. His name was Earl Mathis. He had been inspecting aircraft since before I knew the difference between a wrench and a socket, and he did not care who owned the jet. That is a rare and beautiful thing in aviation. He looked at the splice, the E-17 tag, the powered telemetry unit, and my photographs. Then he said, "Well, that's ugly." I nodded. Technically or spiritually. Both. For the first time in 2 days, Amelia laughed. It came out small and broken, but it was real. Earl grounded the aircraft officially. No memorial flight. No polished farewell above the coast. The Hart family board did not like that. But federal paperwork has a way of making rich men lower their voices. Voss's influence cracked faster than I expected. Not loudly. Not dramatically. He was removed from active representation first. Then the firm issued a careful statement. Then Amelia authorized a full review of estate documents, aircraft records, and archived family materials tied to her father's final years. She did not do it because I pressured her. She did it because once she heard that recording, she could not unhear it. My father came to the hangar in a wheelchair 2 days later. Theo pushed him across the polished floor like he was taxiing a very slow aircraft. Dad looked smaller than I remembered. Stroke does that. Age too. But when I showed him the wire, his eyes sharpened. "I left the tag," he said. "I saw." He touched the panel with 2 fingers. I should have done more. Amelia stood nearby, quiet. Dad looked at her. "Your father wasn't perfect, but he wanted that truth found someday. Just didn't have the courage to hand it to you himself." Amelia nodded once, like the words hurt, but landed where they needed to. Theo held his model Gulfstream against his chest. The crooked tail was still crooked. Amelia noticed. "Did you build that?" she asked. Theo straightened. "Yes, ma'am. It has balance issues." "Runs in the family?" I muttered. Theo elbowed me. Amelia smiled, then turned back to the jet. The official recognition came in a plain sentence from Earl's report. Unauthorized legacy wiring discovered and preserved by Raymond Ellis, A&P mechanic. That was enough for me. No speech, no medal, just my name in the record where it belonged. Later, Amelia handed me the original photo of the E17 tag, printed and sealed in a clear sleeve. "I think your father left this for both of us," she said. Maybe she was right. Has one small thing ever changed the direction of your life? A wire? A note? A name? Something nobody else thought mattered? Tell me below. That evening, the jet stayed grounded in the hangar, but somehow, the truth had finally taken off. 3 months later, the Gulfstream still sat in the Hart hangar, but it no longer looked like a monument. It looked like work. Panels open. Seats covered. Wiring diagrams spread across a table. The old telemetry unit had been removed, documented, preserved, and placed in a clear evidence case beside the E17 tag. Amelia said she wanted every modification on that aircraft recorded properly before it ever flew again. I respected that. A machine can forgive a lot of neglect. It cannot forgive pride forever. Voss disappeared into legal proceedings and careful statements. I heard enough to know his career would not survive clean. I also heard rumors about Amelia's biological father, a name connected to one of her father's oldest business partners. But she never told me the whole story. I never asked. Some truths belong first to the people who have to live with them. My father started talking more after that, not about everything. Men of his generation keep certain rooms locked even when the house is burning, but sometimes, over coffee, he would mention old jobs, old hangars, old mistakes. He never said he was proud of the tag. But once, he looked at Theo's model airplane and said, "A marker left right is better than an apology left late." That was close enough. Theo kept building models at the kitchen table. His Gulfstream still leaned left, and every time I offered to help straighten it, he said, "It has character. It has a structural disagreement," I told him. He grinned. Same thing. Dry humor was still how we kept breathing. Carla's recovery was not a straight line. I wish I could tell you one good thing fixed every other thing. It didn't. She had good weeks and hard weeks. Theo kept writing letters in that old blue and white model kit box anyway. "Dear Mom, I saw a plane today." The new aviation apprenticeship program Amelia funded did not have my name on it at first. I asked for that. Then Theo told me that was weirdly humble in a suspicious way. So we compromised. The first workshop was called the Ellis Practical Maintenance Lab. He was very proud of winning that argument. On the first Saturday, 6 teenagers stood around a training panel while I showed them how one bad wire can make a good system lie. Theo sat in the corner with his model box, pretending not to listen and listening to every word. The lesson I carried from all of it was simple skill, is not just knowing how to fix what is broken. Sometimes it is knowing when something was broken on purpose. That evening, Theo and I stayed after everyone left. The hangar doors were open, the sunset burning orange over the runway, and the grounded Gulfstream sat quiet behind us. He placed his crooked model on the workbench beside my flashlight. "Dad," he said, "you think it'll ever fly right?" I looked at the real jet, then at the small one. "Maybe," I said, "if we don't pretend it's already fixed." If this story stayed with you, I want to hear from you. Have you ever noticed one small detail nobody else cared about a wire, a name, a mark, a sentence, and realized it changed everything? Have you ever been offered comfort in exchange for silence? Tell me about it in the comments. Your story may help someone else trust what they saw. And if stories about fathers, dignity, and quiet skill mean something to you, like this video and subscribe. Until next time, take care of your people. They are watching what you choose when nobody makes it easy.